It's fairly well established that we here on TrekCulture are fans of ships. One only needs to take a glance at certain presenters' model collections to get a handle on the depths of depravity we'll go to. Playing with ships, we mean. Yes, that's what we mean. Every ship is sacred in their own special way. That doesn't mean that they are free from critique or general criticism, or even the horrified reaction of eyeballs that just simply weren't prepared. What is that thing? What does it have on top? What is happening here? All valid questions for some of these beasts, no matter how beautiful some may believe them to be. A ship with a configuration with more or less than 2 nacelles? Witchcraft, we say. Sheer and utter witchcraft. I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are the 10 worst ever starships in Star Trek. Number 10, the Freedom Class. The Freedom Class ship, originally designed to float through space as part of the ruined Wolf 359 fleet, was another example of kit bashing. It borrowed elements from the Ambassador and Galaxy class ships, resulting in a flying saucer with a single nacelle to power it all. As a broken, battered ship in a graveyard, the Freedom Class earns every point for effectiveness. As an operational starship, it's harder to make that claim. While Lower Decks used the design to great comedic effect, that only served to highlight its weak design. Had the Freedom Class remained a ghost ship, derelict and destroyed, then it would be a fun curio. However, it was also an evolution of the earlier Saladin class, which also served as the inspiration for the future past Archer class as well. It was an example of a joke that just went on a bit too long, while reminding us all that the weaker the ship's design, the more likely its quick and painful death would be. Number 9, the USS Curry. Imagine, if you will, that an Excelsior-class vessel span out while exiting the mycelial plane only to hit an undetectable Hawking radiation wall. That same phenomenon inverted the insides of the USS Glenn's crew, so we have to wonder if something similar occurred in the design of the USS Curry. One of the limping Frankenstein fleet of A Time to Stand's opening scene, the Curry resembled a mashup of Excelsior and Miranda-class ships, with a drive section jutting out before the primary hull. It was burning in space as well, adding a fizzing despair to the gloom. The design is a mess, offering far too many weak points for the enemy to target. Cannibalizing existing designs may work in some circumstances, but this one reminds the audience of that transporter scene from the motion picture. To paraphrase a shell-shocked Starfleet transporter chief, we can only hope this doesn't live long. Number 8, Maserite Ships. Kit bashing is a tried and tested method of creating new ships quickly when one is against the clock for a visual asset. Let this be clear, there isn't a thing wrong with kit bashing as a method, it is simply the mashing together of existing model parts and designs to give us something new. That's fine. In the case of the Maserite ships from Enterprise's first season episode Fallen Hero, the audience gets 2 for the price of 1. This was an early example of digital kit bashing, which is exactly what it sounds like, adding together digital elements to create a new ship. It was also one of the earliest reuses of a design in Enterprise. This reuse focused on Andrew Probert's Diderotix Romulan Warbird from The Next Generation. The dorsal section of those beasts was lifted off, given a brown paint job, and launched out into the unknown to serve the Mazarites. They were instantly recognisable, highlighting their birth rather than hiding it. They were effectively flying wings and looked about as mean. They were thrifty, but that's about it. Number 7, Springfield Class. Now the keen-eyed among you might notice that suddenly this video stopped being a voice-over only, and you might be like, what, you just couldn't accept the fact that we wouldn't be looking at his face for a full video? Well, partly you're correct, and happy to be here. But also, some of the ships that we're talking about on this list have appeared fleetingly, they have appeared on screen, but they haven't appeared very much on screen. So quite frankly, we don't have a lot of footage. The Springfield Class being a prime example of this. The Springfield Class USS Chekhov finds itself on this list for, in all honesty, purely aesthetic reasons. Of all the ships created for the graveyard scene in The Best of Both Worlds Part 2, it's by far the ugliest. The saucer section, sitting beneath those highlighter pens above a deflector dish that screams afterthought, is just a bizarre choice. To be fair, it was never meant to be looked at with any real scrutiny. It was among many that were popped into the background of a scene to suggest a greater battle had taken place, so one can't hold too much against it. It was almost named on screen before the writers worried that evoking such a popular character's name in that setting would be too disturbing for audiences. The Springfield Class may have done exactly what it set out to do, but in all fairness, we wouldn't be shocked to find the Borg had targeted this one first, just to put her out of her misery. Now, the Springfield is not the only ship we have sod-all footage for, but more on that in a couple of entries. Number 6. The USS Vengeance. The positives of the Vengeance, while few, do highlight how strong this warship is. It's armed to the teeth, has weapons pods that can detach from the main hull to provide extra cover, and is faster than the average Federation vessel. There ends most of the good stuff. This ship is overstacked to the extreme, thus making it a bit of a mess. The actual design of the ship is clearly meant to evoke memories of the Constitution class, though that does it no favours. Sure, it can punch its way out of most situations, but it also leaves itself open to some pretty dumb manoeuvres as well. To be fair, Khan did lower its shields to beam the torpedoes aboard, but really, shouldn't that ship have been able to overpower the Enterprise with ease? With a genocidal madman at the helm, the Vengeance should never have been in any real danger. Instead, it, along with its oddly carved out hull, ends up colliding with half of San Francisco. For such a giant piece of muscle, it doesn't really last that long. Number 5. USS Discovery A. The USS Discovery A, being so similar to its predecessor, may seem like an odd entry here. After all, the original Discovery, inspired by Ralph McQuarrie's sketches for Star Trek Planet of the Titans, is extremely close in design. Why then single out this iteration of the Discovery? The ship suffers from additional cut-out sections, floating nacelles, and a general lack of distinction. Where the original Discovery primarily left the cutouts on its saucer section only, the Discovery A design elects to take chunks out of the drive section as well. This is especially egregious when one considers the TARDIS-like size of the turbolift system. Just where on earth does any of that go? The floating nacelles utilise programmable matter to connect them with the rest of the ship, though this is shown to have its own set of weaknesses, one exploited during the Emerald Chain takeover. The Discovery A may best be described as a toy with added pieces stuck to it and chopped out because they look cool rather than serving any real purpose. It all seems a bit academic after that coda in life itself though. Number 4. Kelvin, Bird of Prey. The Klingon bird of prey that appears in Star Trek Into Darkness started life at a disadvantage. It was the successor to one of the most enduring popular designs of ships from the entire franchise. Following the bird of prey introduced in The Search for Spock was never going to be an easy feat. Its size was the first black mark against it. These ships are clearly small fighters, closer in scale to a Maquis Raider or a Peregrine class fighter. The most recognisable elements, the swept out wings rising to facilitate landing, looked crooked, almost held together with hope rather than steel. The frenetic nature of its introduction did it no favours, nor did the scenes that followed. Without any further scenes giving the audience a better appreciation for its design, it was left to commercially available models to get a good look at it. It's by no means awful, it's simply there. Number 3. The Narada. Star Trek 09 reinvigorated the franchise after a couple of years of listlessness. The end of Enterprise had brought a dark period in Trek's history. It seemed like Starfleet would never fly again. Thankfully, J.J. Abrams saw to it that it did, before almost immediately kicking 7 levels of hell out of the poor USS Kelvin. As it moved closer to investigate, the Kelvin unfortunately encountered one of the most bizarre ships in Star Trek's many years. The Romulan mining vessel Narada just doesn't make any sort of sense. While the inside is an absolute death trap of floating platforms and slippery surfaces, the exterior is hardly any better. The ship's massive drill serves a vaguely realistic purpose. It drills, fairly straightforward. But why does it have more tendrils than a Portuguese man-o'-war jellyfish? Why is it armed to the teeth? Why does it look more like a sea urchin than a space-worthy vessel? If its sole reason to exist was to look intimidating, it achieves that with flying colours. If it was ever planned as an actual vessel to do a job, it raises way more questions than it answers. Number 2. 3-nacelled D. Full disclosure, the Enterprise D is usually toward the top of our lists of favourite ships, a fact only compounded by its emotional return in Vox, so you might wonder what a variant of that ship is doing on this list. Yes, it goes to Warp 13 and it's armed to the teeth, but my friends, look at the f***ing state of it. The ship seems designed just so that its arrival would pack an extra punch, slicing through those Klingon ships the way it does. In that respect, it was a triumph. Aesthetically, however, choices. The phaser cannon on the underside of the saucer section looks more at home in the mirror universe, and yes, we're fully aware that it does indeed fly there, than it does in the Prime. That thing is designed to punch up and cut up its foes, which is more than a little at odds with the next generation. A dreadnought of science it may be, but one of the best, she surely ain't. Speaking of ugly, number 1, the Jagger Class. I'm back! If you followed this channel for a while, you knew this ship was coming. Oh my god, what were they thinking when they slapped together 2 ships with the intrepid inspiration of Victor Frankenstein? It is, simply put, one ugly creation. The saucer section of an Intrepid class ship is perched atop a Maquis Raider, with intrepid nacelles glued to the small wings of the little fighter. Little is the operative word, as the audience was already familiar with the design. These were small ships, barely bigger than a Danube-class runabout, cannibalized into a warship of inconceivable proportions. Now listen, we've all had those nights where we've partied a little harder than we expected and our thoughts wandered farther than we dreamed possible. But in the immortal words of the wise Dr. Ian Malcolm, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think about if they should. And that's everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much for watching along. You are awesome and you are wonderful. Please don't forget to follow us on the various socials. We're at TrekCulture. I am at Sean Ferrick. You are brilliant. Look after yourself till I see you again. Make sure that you live long and prosper. And I'll see you soon. Thanks very much.